If you have ever seen horror movies or any other horror media, you likely have run into the occult. In these stories, there is an eerie, strange power that is causing havoc in the world of man, and regular rules of reality do not apply anymore. I often become interested in things I see in movies and games, and begin to wonder what inspired the things in it originally. And in the real world, the occult runs between religion and philosophy, being the peculiar end result of several different aspects of human behavior. For one, we all automatically act as if there is really some metaphysical, otherworldly quality affecting our daily lives. Let's say you would visit my house and I would offer you a cup of coffee and you would accept my offer happily. If, however, I would suddenly announce that this specific cup you are drinking from right now belonged originally to the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, you would most likely spit the coffee out and be extremely upset with me. Even if this cup just belonged to Dahmer and it was not used in some way in any of the crimes he committed, this item now carries a cursed aura. You don't want to have anything to do with it, and on the other hand, some twisted individual would want to buy it from me, no matter how expensive the cup would be. If it is revealed later on that I lied and it is just a normal cup, or you do some research and discover that this item is actually fake and never belonged to Dahmer, the spell is broken and once again the item is just a regular old boring cup. A less dramatic version of this is when some item belonged to a celebrity once, and the completely useless thing, like an used napkin, becomes an expensive collector's item. We are also bound by rituals that we constantly do without realizing it, and these rituals kind of carry the same functions as magical spells. When I was a kid, I remember that if you promised something but you kept one of your hands behind your back and had your index finger and middle finger crossed, the promise somehow became not binding. In the adult world, if you go to court in America, for example, you have to swear an oath with your hand on the Bible. Later on, people are often reminded that they are under oath. You are really not supposed to lie in court anyway, but the situation suddenly becomes way more serious after the ritual for the oath is conducted, and heavier punishments can follow. You can take the Bible out of it. The point really is that you do something, some gesture, or you utter some specific words, and then the situation changes. Via these small rituals, we access a metaphysical element of our world. Symbolism is another part of the equation. Nation-states did not exist for most of human history. It took a long time for the concept to be invented, so in order for these ideas to become flesh, different symbols were needed. Flags, songs, and special celebrations hold the pieces to the stories that form the mythology of a nation, and any nation in itself is just a narrative that we tell, as none of them exist in this world the same way as this laptop I am using right now does. Ideologies can hold the most practical consequences, even though they really are only in our heads, constructed by the symbolic order. So with the occult, you need both rituals and symbols. The symbols you need represent a narrative in a sense too, often forming a small poetic piece in itself. A good and straightforward example of this is the Chinese yin-yang symbol. White represents the feminine aspect, black the masculine aspect, and they both are intertwined in an inseparable way, forming a whole, but on top of this, each color has a dot of the opposing color included in it, as there is a small piece of the other side already in each aspect. They cannot exist solely by themselves at all. Such a simple symbol now holds a pretty poetic story that is quite true. Basically, all the different details in occultism and magic make this kind of poetic sense. For example, one ingredient used in fighting demons is salt. Back in the day, before refrigeration, food had to be heavily salted, so that it would keep and not get spoiled. Demons, by their nature, are a corroding entity. Everything they touch gets spoiled and decayed, but salt prevents spoiling. By this logic, salt counteracts the power of demons. Before we go forward, something needs to be said about the human attribute of pattern recognition. Everyone in the world has, as kids, looked at the clouds in the sky and talked to others how one cloud looks like an elephant and one looks like a ship, and so many things you see can resemble a human face in some way. In 1944, psychologists Fritz Heider and Marianne Simmel created a short animation where a big triangle, a small triangle, and a circle go around the screen in a random way. Almost all they showed this video to explain the animation in a way that attributed personalities to the shapes and there was some sort of a story happening, even though it really were just some shapes going all around in a random pattern. As humans, we really can't help it that we automatically see the world through this lens. Pattern recognition is a great thing, as it has allowed us to survive in the world, and we can do wonderful things like science because of it. But this trait can go overboard and manifest itself in weird ways, for example in conspiracy theories. In order to explain the threatening world, a conspiracy theorist starts to link things together, even those that seemingly are irrelevant. And in the end, you have figured out a hidden mechanic of the world that shows where the danger is. Conspiracy theories involve the assumption that there is a group of powerful people or beings that control the world. They are evil, but you are good, and you are onto their schemes. And the whole thing is somewhat religious, resembling a hidden world of demons and witches that want bad things to happen. It is striking that there really is a lack of abstraction in conspiracy theories, as in the things in the world are not results of economic models, political models, ideologies, or anything like that, but amount to a group X being evil, no matter how crazy the story otherwise is. One explanation of why the pattern recognition goes overboard is tied to evolution. If a hunter-gatherer A heard the bushes rustle and he decided that it was probably nothing and he ignores it, but then he gets eaten by a tiger, his genes did not get carried on. If a hunter-gatherer B hears the bushes rustle and he immediately decides that it was a tiger and he runs away, even though it really was the wind this time, he gets to live and pass on his genes in the long run. Better safe than sorry. Now, to get back to the occult, the same concept of pattern recognition going overboard seems to apply. The word occult comes from Latin occultus, and it means hidden, secret, or concealed. To get this mysterious power to manifest, you really get the most vexing part of occultism, which is that the rituals and symbols used become exhaustingly and pedantically detailed, as the logic apparently is that you need the maximum amount of things at once, that all make poetic sense at the same time, and that somehow opens the accessway to the magical power. A big part of this symbolism is about numbers. In Christianity, the number 7 represents God, since God created the world in 7 days. And the number 777 is perfect number 7 3 times, since you have the Holy Trinity on top of the perfect number, which also explains why number 666 represents the devil, as it is 3 times the failure to reach perfection, as 6 is less than 7, and so on and so forth. I've lived through several grimoires and magical books of the Western canon, and I do have to say that they make very tedious reading, as the descriptions of what ingredients represent what, how to do the rituals, and how the numbers make sense are just endless. It also seems to me that the magicians think that when the magic they use is excessively complicated, it somehow validates what they are saying, and it is all the necessary proof needed to prove that they are right. Let's look at some modern examples. Last year I stumbled upon a YouTuber named Galahad Eridanus. In his video Contact 2020, he tells how he had met a supernatural entity by using psychedelics, and then he started to meet this entity even when he was sober, and this being started to give him hints about something big that was going to happen in the near future. To understand this message, the author starts to look for a hidden meaning, and in the end of the video, his numerological explanations really are extensive, and he honestly starts to sound like a crazy person. I'll play some of the audio here.
Sure enough, I saw the eclipse again, and the angel returned. This experience stands out even among the others. It was the clearest the communications and visions had ever been. Now, I won't go into it here, but the angel gave plain and decisive instructions. Write it all down, and let it be heard by all who would hear it. It told me to make this video and upload it on this date. I asked how I could prove what I was saying was true. It told me the pyramids would be the proof. It took a little bit, but I figured out what that meant. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the most precisely oriented structure on the face of the planet. The north face of the pyramid is aligned to true north only off by about 3/60ths of a degree. The Great Pyramid's 146.6 meter height, when multiplied by exactly 1 billion, equals the distance between the Earth and the Sun, which is 147 million kilometers. It's about 6 million tons. Multiply that by exactly 1 quintillion, and you get the Earth's mass, about 6 septillion tons. If you take the height of the pyramid, again 146.6 meters, and the perimeter of the pyramid, about 920 meters, and you multiply both of those numbers by 43,200, those numbers respectively correspond almost exactly with the polar radius of the Earth and the equatorial circumference of the Earth. 43,200 seems like a pretty random number. It almost seems like it was pulled out of nowhere just to make the math work, but it wasn't. There's way more going on than that. 43,200 is 72 multiplied by 600. That means it's 6 plus 6 times 6 times 600. There are 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and 24 hours in a day. 6 times 4, 24. There are 12 months in a year. 6 times 2, 12. The average month has 30 days. 6 times 5, 30. A leap year is 6 times 61 days. 6-sided hexagons can be tiled, and if you try and tile circles, triangles, or rhombi, they all form hexagons. Molecules form in overwhelmingly hexagonal structures. 6 elements, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, and sulfur, comprise 98% of all living matter. Carbon, the most important of those 6, is element number 6. Arrange carbon atoms into 6-sided hexagons and you get graphene, the strongest material known to man. If you multiply any number by 6 and add the digits together until you only have 1, they'll always add up to 3, 6, or 9. Cubes have 6 sides, 1 for each of the 6 directions of 3D space. There are 6 full radians in a circle, and a circle contains 360 degrees. 6 times 60, 360. And for some reason, if you multiply the measurements of the Great Pyramid by 6 plus 6 times 6 times 600, you get the proportions of the planet. And this is the structure more perfectly oriented than any other on the face of the Earth. 6 plus 6 times 6 is 72, and as I've said, every 72 years the orientation of the Earth's axis shifts by 1 degree. One begins to wonder how random anything really is. To me, the Great Pyramid appears, at the very least, to be a monument to the belief that nothing is. Now, you might be asking, what do the pyramids have to do with any of this? Well, besides being in the same part of the world Abraxas originated in, there are 3 pyramids. They're a reflection of the constellation of Orion's Belt. Orion's Belt is 3 stars in a line. Well, the thing I'd kept seeing since September were sets of 3 numbers in a line, and since October, I'd had this weird feeling that it had something to do with stars. That's what the triple numbers meant. They were Orion's Belt. And that's what the pyramids are.
You get the drift. I hope that he is doing alright, and I really wonder if he has some sort of a diagnosed mental illness. But at any rate, many intelligent people who otherwise are rational have went into these occult rabbit holes. In Galahad's another video, titled Abraxas, the author explains a cosmogram he made, an occult picture that represents his understanding of the universe's structure. I'll play a small clip of it here.
But all this bears a striking resemblance to the theology which my cosmogram laid out. Here, the right foot of Abraxas is the serpent of the tree of knowledge, and the left is the Gnostic demiurge. The serpent is associated with freedom, being on the rising side of fire and air. The demiurge is associated with restriction, on the descending side of earth and water. If you look at the head of Abraxas, you'll see I put around it a cruciform halo. From any orthodox perspective, this is blasphemy. You're only supposed to put these on Christ. But the idea behind it was that Christ was the third and highest force in a triad, which I was using Abraxas to depict. So both triads are basically identical. The only major difference between what Steiner said and what I just said is that he identified the restrictive principle with a different being.
And so on and so forth. It is very interesting to see new religious and occult activity through internet in today's world. After the wake of modern science, parapsychology started to walk right next to magic, as the esoteric powers could possibly be harnessed via more scientific methods. Now many books and videos have been made on the US military's secret research into parapsychology, like in the project Stargate. These operations have caused quite a stir, since they sound like the schemings of someone from an insane asylum. But the logic behind them has been simple. If any psychic powers happen to be true, and we disregard them while the Soviets do research and gain an upper hand with them, we are making a grave mistake. It is better to be safe than sorry, and a psychic spy that could see from afar is a lot cheaper than an expensive radar system. Such rationalizations seem crazy too, but we really do end up in a weird crossroads when we have religious societies combined with the scientific method. Look at it this way. The United States is a Christian nation, and most people there are religious. Doesn't being religious automatically mean that supernatural powers and entities exist? Who is to say that these powers cannot be accessed by humans too? According to the Bible, there has been many instances of supernatural happenings. Shouldn't we view the possibility of using that power seriously? And even if it would be deemed as heretical, can we really afford such niceties when the US is locked in deadly conflict against communism? What seems to be going on with occultism, I would say, is tied to what I talked about in my earlier video, Meeting God, Trance States and the Absolute. Some people can reach altered states through meditation or just spontaneously. And I would think that this is what happens with people who have had experiences of occultism working. Some people can have a more loose sense of self, which makes them feel that there is some sort of a greater stage of being out there that they are connected to. It is the regular religiosity, but the practitioner believes that he can have much more agency. On top of this, you have phenomena like lucid dreaming, near-death experiences and sleep paralysis, which all add to the fact that there seems to be supernatural parts of reality. One more thing, tied to the entities occultists think that they can summon, be they angels or demons. Anthropologists have tied the pattern recognition to the phenomena of religion as a whole, tied to the fact that we tend to see the world in human terms. If the sun or the rain allow crops to grow, and the tribe can have food, the tribe easily starts to treat the sun or the rain as a semi-person, as a sentient entity with a character. In human relations, if I give you something, you will give me something else back. So in order to keep the sun shining and the rain falling, the gods of the sun and rain are given offerings. These offerings become sacrifices, as it is much more of a heavy thing to give a sacrifice than a mere gift. A sacrifice also illustrates how the tribe is a weaker participant in this relationship, since a gift is usually given to someone of an equal standing. An angel or a demon that a magician attempts to have contact falls into this category too, but he tries to take a hold of the supernatural being and bend it to his will. All in all, occultism is alive and well in today's world. It still can lead to a tragedy. One part of the Western tradition has been tied to the idea that we could somehow force Jesus' second coming to happen faster, and this train of thought became absorbed into the Christian Zionism, even though it originally was part of the occult. Such fanaticism is partially what has led into the tragedies and massacres in the Middle East today. The world is an interesting place. Thanks for listening. Have a good one.